island and peninsular receptacle outlet requirements for the 2023 and how that was changing in the 2026. Now, in my video, I was rather harsh, but at the end of the day, I still don't like it. And I don't like the fact that I got a lot of emails from people that said, Paul, can you deep dive into it a little more so we can see what actually is taking place or what is likely to take place for the 2026 edition of the National Electrical Code when it comes to this island and peninsular thing, when it comes to receptacle outlets. So I thought it would be prudent for me to do a little educational video, maybe ease up on Code Panel 2 a little bit, and basically break down what the proposed change will be. Now, in that coffee hour, you heard me kind of criticize about the fact that they were putting an allowance to be able to put the receptacle outlet in the face of a drawer. Okay. Okay, so come to doing a little research on that. Again, I was new to it. I wanted to dig into it, and I promised you I would, and I did. And it seems like this comes from an ADA requirement in order to give an allowance for a receptacle to be lower in order to be able to meet ADA type of rules. Again, not sure that plays any role in a residential application. Maybe in ADA for a multifamily, a commercial application where you have apartment complexes. But again, it starts to all get muddy. But at the end of the day, I can now see where this came from. And I went and looked at the public comments and all of the information that was submitted to see where this came from, okay? So let's kind of take you to the code. I'll explain what the 2023 is briefly, and then I'll show you what we're going to have, I believe we're going to have for the 2026 edition of the NEC, at least when it comes to these island and peninsula receptacle outlet requirements, okay? So let's go look at that. All right, so first things first, this is the 2023 language, okay? So we're all clear on what the 2023 requires. First of all, it's if you install a receptacle. So here you see receptacle outlets if they're installed to serve the island or peninsula countertop or work surface. So it's not requiring you to put them in the 2023. It's not like what it was in the 2020. Here in the 2023 code, it's if you want to put them in, okay? Now, if you choose to put them in, then you're going to have to meet these receptacle outlet location requirements, and we'll look at those briefly. But here it's if you choose not to put it in, and that's your prerogative, that's the design professional's prerogative, then you still have to provide the provisions for future installations of receptacle outlets on this island and peninsula. So what that means is that you're going to have to either install a junction box under the island or peninsula and run that small appliance branch circuit into it and cap it off. You could put a raceway from one of the boxes in the kitchen that serve the countertop, the 20 amp small appliance branch circuit. You could run that over and up and put it in a junction box under the island and peninsula. You could do that. Some people would argue if it's an unfinished crawl space or basement and you have access to circuits down there, you could take the small appliance and run it down and put it in a junction box and label it, and they could just simply drill up into the island later. I mean, there's many ways that your AHJ may accept it, but the key factor here is they have to have the provisions there so that if down the road somebody wants to add a receptacle outlet to this island or this peninsula, that they have that circuit available, okay? And so they don't have to go try and get back in the walls and they got to try to fish it through walls and all this kind of thing. It needs to be a provision there. So that's why it says this in the NEC right here. It says if the receptacle outlet is not provided, it says to serve an island or peninsula countertop or work surface. It says provisions shall be provided at the island or peninsula for future addition of receptacle outlets to serve the island or peninsula countertop. Okay, so future addition. So they're not requiring you to put it there, but you have to be able to have it in place that it is there in case the electrician comes later and installs it. Now, here's my dilemma on that when it comes to the 2023 edition of the NEC. This house is already done, and this is why we argued that years ago we wanted more receptacles on the island or peninsula because we needed to have more receptacles because people were using extension cords. And there was a big argument, and IAEI submitted it. We believe, inspectors believe, they need more receptacle outlets there because people were using those little extension cords for cook plates and crock pots and whatever, and people were pulling them all. Well, come full circle here to the 2023, you had the Consumer Product Safety Commission put out a report. NFPA jumped all over it, and they put out this report saying that people were getting hurt, people were pulling things off of countertops because of these receptacle outlets serving the countertop on these islands and peninsulas. So they believed that they should be optional and removed. They also believed that if you do put them there, then they have to be in specific locations. And that's where it used to be below the countertop, not more than 12 inches, and not under an overhang that was more than 6 inches from the base. You remember that? That's in the 2020. Well, that disappeared for the 2023. So it had to be on or above, or they could be something that is those pop-ups that are listed, or they could actually be built into the actual island or workspace assembly. It could be listed and designed to be built in. We're not talking about those relocatable power taps that basically have receptacles on it and it has an attachment plug on it. No, those are things we're not talking about. So these things are listed specifically to go in it, pop up from it, or integrated into the workspace. Those type of things, if they were listed for that application, then they were okay now. And that is what we have in the 2023. But there was no longer any provision for them to be below the countertop. Okay, well, that created a problem because you and I both know that after this inspection takes place, what's going to happen? Electrician's going to be called out to put in this receptacle, and what are they going to do? The homeowner's not going to want them to cut the granite. They're not going to want them to put in this ugly pop-up or this tombstone. They're going to say, well, the electrician's going to go, well, for years, I've always just put it on the side. So they're probably going to put it on the side, which would be a direct violation of the NEC at that point. Okay. So I submitted a public input for the 2026 to try to say, look, we need to circumvent this issue where electricians are going to come and probably put it below the countertop. Because where else are they going to put it? Well, some people said, well, then let them buy the kind that they cut into the granite and that they actually come up above the countertop. They're expensive. And so, again, cost. Everybody gripes about cost, right? AFCIs, they cost money. GFCIs, they cost money. Well, these things are a couple $100, and so, okay, maybe you only need one for the island or something. That's all you want. So since now we don't have any requirements for the number of them, so anyway, my public input was rejected. However, there was quite a few public inputs, and one of them was from an inspector, and I believe he was in Minnesota. I'm not sure. I can't remember. We can go look. But he said, you know what? The ADA is changing, the rules are changing, and again, there's height restrictions. They can't reach so high, so you got to have an application whereas if they want to put a receptacle outlet in, it needs to be lower than the countertop. Okay, so the code panel looked at this, and there was tons of public inputs. NEMA put in a bunch of public inputs and public comments and everything. And so they came up with this compromise where they said, you know what? Okay. You can't have any receptacles below the countertop, but we'll let you put a receptacle below the countertop as long as it's more than 24 inches from the countertop. Okay, now why would you want to do that? Well, under the 2026, and that's what we're talking about now, the proposed 2026, I'll show you the code language. I'm just kind of giving you the synopsis here. The reason they did that is because maybe that is actually a wall space, or somebody argues it's a wall space and it needs to have a receptacle. Well, you could have one down there, or you could just choose to put one down there as long as it's what? At least 24 inches away from the countertop. Okay. Now, the other application would be, what if I had a peninsula and I can't have any receptacles below the countertop, but I had an adjacent wall? Well, that would technically be below the countertop, but it's on an adjacent wall. And that would be fine as long as it's at least 24 inches away from the base of the cabinet. So that kind of pushes it away. So nobody could try to run an appliance cord over to it, because appliance cords typically aren't longer than 24 inches, sometimes 18, 24 again. So they're trying to keep those receptacles away from being used by the countertop. Okay, so that takes us to the language of the 2026 edition of the NEC. So that's what we're going to go look at. So let's go look at it right here. And let's see here. Let's see right here. So this is the language right here. And let me, I don't think I can blow this up anymore. It's not going to let me blow it up anymore. No, this is it. So what we've got here, it says, this is the 2026 language now. So I kind of gave you the concept of what we're doing. Island and peninsula countertops and work surfaces. It says if provided, again, there's that if again. If provided to serve the island or peninsula countertop or work surface, it says receptacle outlets shall be installed in accordance with 210.52C3, which is the same kind of as we saw before, okay, on or above, that type of thing, in the countertop, or designed into the work surface as well, as long as it's a listed assembly, listed receptacle outlet assembly. So we have some provisions here. It says, if a receptacle outlet is not provided, again, this is the one where it talks about you had to provide the provision. So all of that stayed the same, okay? And this is not letting me increase the size. So you're just sorry about that, guys. It's just not letting me increase the size. So you can't read it. I'm just going to read it to you. Sometimes it lets me, sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, it is not letting me increase it. So I'm going to read it to you. So the locations, these did not change. Okay. So receptacle outlets shall be located in one or more of the following. Okay. So those receptacle outlets, again, if they're installed, they have to be on or above, but not more than 20 inches above the countertop or work surface. Okay, so what does that mean for me and you? All right, even in the 2026, I can install it on, maybe like a tombstone. I can install it above. If I have a cabinet above it, it's not more than 20 inches. I can put it up at the cabinet so that it's not more than 20 inches above the countertop or the work surface. I'd be okay if that's how it's situated. I'd be fine, right? Now, the second one is in a countertop using receptacle outlet assemblies listed for use in countertops. So again, that is the kind like the barrel, you put them in it and it's hardwired and they pop up, that type of thing. So again, or they could be actually in the countertop surface as well. If they're listed outlet assembly, okay, again, we're not talking about relocatable power taps. These are receptacle outlet assemblies. Then they're listed specifically for their use. Okay, I'll allow them. That's not a problem. That didn't change. Next, it says in work surface using receptacle outlet assemblies listed for use in work surfaces or listed for use in countertops. Okay, so we're giving you some options for things that are either designed to integrate to work into the work surface, pop up from the work surface, all of it. We're giving you some options. You just can't go below, okay? It's still there, okay? Still can't go below. Now, what they've done here, and you heard me talk about it earlier, what they've done now to give a little bit of a break is that they'll say this, okay? Let's go back to the code. So now we've got this, receptacle outlet locations prohibited. What is prohibited? So he goes on to say the required and permitted receptacle outlets installed in a location that is accessible outside of a cabinet or wall surface that are below the countertop and work surfaces shall comply with the following. Okay, so any that are required or that are permitted. And of course, up there, here, they are permitted. It is not required for these serving the island or peninsula, okay? So it says, well, number one, receptacle outlets shall not be installed on adjacent walls extending from the base cabinet within 24 inches, okay? So I have a receptacle outlet on an adjacent wall to the island or peninsula. It has to be at least, what? 24 inches away from the base. Now, this might be a required receptacle to meet a wall spacing requirement in 210.52A. So it needs to be there, and that's okay as long as it's what? On that adjacent wall to the island or peninsula, adjacent wall as long as it's at least 24 inches away from the base of a cabinet. Okay, makes sense. Again, trying to make you feel that you can't get that appliance cord over to it. It's far enough away, you couldn't just plug it in. All right? It's not going to stop people from using extension cords as they did in the past, but it is what it is. Next, the second one says, receptacle outlets beneath a countertop shall not be located within 24 inches of the countertop or work surface. So what they're trying to say with this one is, let's say I have an island, and maybe this island is constructed to where it's basically a 2x4 wall. It creates a wall space, and the cabinet butts up against it. So now you may have a wall space, for example, that maybe separates a living room. And so if that wall space is 2 feet or more, you may have a required receptacle there. Okay? So if it is required, all this is saying is, you know what? I'm going to let you now put a receptacle below the countertop surface. I didn't let you do it in the 2023 at all, but I'm going to let you do it as long as that receptacle, and again, that's not there to serve the countertop. It's just a required receptacle for some other reason, or maybe you want to put it down there. I'll let you do it, but it has to be what? It has to be not located within 24 inches of the countertop or work surface. So you put it down low. And if it's, again, making sure that it's 2 feet away from the work surface, then I'm going to let you to put one below the countertop. And the reason for that is because it's not be something that you could plug the appliance into. The cord's not long enough. Now, like I said, could people use extension cords, the little brown ones, to put crock pot on it or whatever? Yes. So my problem with this is you're not going to remove things that we originally had years ago, whereas there is no receptacle here. And I am allowed to put a receptacle down low, let's say to maybe meet a wall space requirement, if that was the case. Is that going to stop them from plugging an extension cord in it just so they can plug in something on the countertop? No. So I still think people are going to use extension cord. And that was the reason that we had more outlets, receptacle outlets installed in the past before the 2023. That's just my opinion. All right. But now we're going to let you put some below it. And then lastly, it came up with an exception. And this exception right here, okay, came from a submittal that basically says, you know what, the ADA is changing. And the ADA, because of the height of receptacles and those rules, they're going to write language that's going to allow you to put a receptacle in the face of a drawer. Okay, so so let's look at it this way. So if I have an island and I have all these drawers around it, they're going to have an exception that says, you know what? I'll let you install below the countertop. Okay. I can let you be below the countertop if you put it in the face of the drawer. Okay. All right. I'll let you do that. Now, they didn't say anything about this being specifically for ADA. This opens it up to everything. Well, when it was submitted, the argument was to meet some ADA rules that are changing for accessibility and all that. But this rule isn't just about that. This is very broad. This is all installations, all dwelling unit applications. So we'll let you put it in the drawer. Here's my problem with that. First of all, most builders that were bitching originally for don't like it below because they didn't want it to be it inhibit any drawers anyway. So we put it on the side. Well, they're going to have a fit if you have to take up one of their drawers to put it down in the drawer face. Secondly, it doesn't say anything in here about making sure that drawer is fixed in place. Now, some people will say, well, Paul, no, that means inside the drawer. No. I went back and read the submittal on this. And the submittal on this was very clear that they were talking about it being in the face of the drawer. Now, I will see if I can find that so that I can share that with you. If I can find it, bear with me. I will do my best to see if I can find that because, again, I want to show where that came from. And I believe that that's actually in the original first draft. So hold on. Let me see if I can get back where the first draft was. Bear with me, folks. I will get it. But I want to show you the history here on this because some people say, no, that means in the drawer. Well, that defeats the purpose, right? Why would it be in the drawer? But anyway, I understand that people that want to question something. So let's go to the code here. So I'm going to go here and take you and see how this works. This may be muddy, so bear with me. I want to show you what it's saying. All right, so let's go to the code. So I'm here. And see, here's the public inputs that started all this, right? So I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to try to find, I know this is muddy. Bear with me as I go down and try to find the one that I need right here. All right, so let me kind of, I don't know how I'm going to share this here. Hold on. Here, I'll do it this way, and then I'll drag it. So here's what it starts out that says, okay, so this was submitted by this individual right here. Just bear with me. It's a little muddy, but I'll get it. It says, this public input is being submitted on behalf of the Minnesota Department of Labor Industry. It's saying, currently the Department of Inspection staff includes 14 office staff, 12 field inspectors, 2 virtual inspectors, and 50 plus contract electrical inspectors that complete over 170,000 electrical inspections annually. Okay, great. It says installers, let me bring this back. It says installers, designers, and AHJs have been forced to debate if the requirements in 210.52C3 must be adhered to in all instances, or if receptacle outlets could be installed on the face of a cabinet as part of a design that considers the standards for accessible design. Exception number 1 will give us clear direction to allow receptacle outlet placement per the ADA standards for accessibility design. Okay, so that is where that ended up coming into play, folks, right there. All right, so let me get rid of all this so we can get back to this. So that is where the language came for it to be placed in the drawer. Currently, the language is so muddy in that it makes you look at it and go, okay, well, that drawer could still move. If you're going to have me put it in the face of the drawer, and that's based on that submittal and that rationale, right? Then you're looking at it and you go, well, if that's the rationale, and I'm going to look and see what they actually, the code panel did on it. The code panel submitted it, and let's see here. So here's what the resolution was from the code panel. They said, it says where the NEC addresses safety issue, it must also addressed for those requiring accessibility. If the understanding of code making panel 2 that it is the understanding of code making panel 2 that a new version of A117.1 standards will align, and I don't know why my mind thought that was an elevator standard, but anyway, standard will align and work within the requirements of the NEC regarding placement of a receptacle outlets in a kitchen. So that is where they worked into that and said, you know what? We're going to let you put it into the face. But accessibility rules don't necessarily apply to just a 1-family, 2-family dwelling. But by accepting that, it now broadens it out, and it's going to let me put it in the face. Okay, well, maybe that solves the issue for some people. They're like, cool, Paul, now I have ability to put it below. How many of you think that the builder is going to let you sacrifice a drawer to be able to put a receptacle in it? And are they going to seal that drawer? Well, are they going to fix it in place? Because if it moves, now I have a problem with how I'm supplying the wiring method to that box and whether it can move back and forth and all this kind of stuff, how it's being secured, how I'm going to secure it within a certain number of inches. How am I going to do all that if it can move in and out with a drawer? So I know what you're saying. You're saying, well, Paul, no, they're going to fix the drawer. Okay, well, why don't we fix that language, right? And all we have to do is say that it can be in a fixed drawer or a false front fixed stationary drawer. That's all I'm looking for. I'm okay to allow me to have a receptacle below. Personally, I believe it should go back to the way it was in 2020. That's just my opinion. I understand that the Consumer Product Safety Commission had this report. I get it. But I also remember all the way back again where we had people getting hurt because there was use of extension cords. All I see this rule doing now Now that it is allowing you to go below it, allowing you to go more than 24 inches below the countertop on the adjacent wall, as long as it's 24 inches away from the base of the cabinet, I still see people looking at it and going, well, you know, I need a receptacle up here. Ooh, I don't have one. That's okay, Johnny. Go get the little brown extension cord that we got at the checkout at Walmart, and we'll just plug it into that. And kids still pulling it off. Stuff's still happening, okay? The fact of the matter is, you can't protect everybody by themselves. If you're the parent, you're the owner, and you're going to be using that receptacle that's on the side and it's not more than 12 inches down under an overhang that's not more than 6 inches, like it was in 2020, it's your responsibility to make sure that that's either taped down, kept placed. That's your job as a parent. We cannot protect everybody from themselves, okay? The code can't do that. It's a minimum safety standard. Anyway, off my soapbox. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed that. I wanted to break down the requirements a little bit easier so that you understood, because I was kind of very loosey-goosey on it in my coffee hour on the 13th. But I want to make sure that I deep dived into it, because I did have people that asked me questions about it. And you got to see where the rationale came from to put it in the face of the actual drawer. But I think we lack direction on that drawer, because somebody in a 1 and 2 family dwelling or a 1 family single family dwelling, they ain't gonna look at no ADA rule. They ain't gonna go look at that A117.1 that they reference or whatever. They ain't gonna look at that. You get what I'm saying? So, and here's what I think. I think electricians are going to end up just putting it on the side of the cabinet when the customer wants it anyway, and they're going to say to the code. And again, we're back where we started. All right? All right, folks, hopefully you got something out of today's episode. Again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm interpreting it wrong. Maybe it'll get fixed in a Nitman. I don't know, but that's how I see it. Till next time, folks, stay safe. God bless, and we'll catch you on another episode of Coffee Hour.